What's the state of the labor force in 2022? So recently we've been hearing a couple of conflicting ideas. We've been hearing about employers facing a talent shortage and struggling to hire and fill roles. Yet at the same time, we've seen the labor force in Mecklenburg County and in the Charlotte MSA really exceed pre-pandemic levels. So what we've been trying to do is figure out how do we square these two polar opposites of the labor force is exceeding pre-pandemic levels, yet employers are saying it's a tighter labor market than ever and it's harder to hire than ever before. And so this is really what I'm talking about, where between January of 2020 and March of 2022, the labor force has increased by over 20,000 people. So this is pre-pandemic labor force compared to the most recent labor force data today. And you can see the large increase in the labor force. So how do you explain the tight labor market and the talent shortage that employers are facing today? And this is where we wanted to bring some additional context in. So the census recently released 2021 ACS data. And in this data, we found the huge increase in remote workers, not just locally, but nationally. And so just for some context here, I have the 2018 labor force for Mecklenburg County on the left, and you can see the number of remote workers and then everyone else. So then the remainder of the labor force that wasn't working remotely. And so you can see about 38,000 people were working remotely and over 560,000 people were not. On the right-hand side, you can see what that looked like in 2021. So even with our 20,000 increase in the labor force, you see we have over 200,000 people working remotely here in Mecklenburg County today, which leaves us with a labor force of local workers of only 414,000. And so if you are an employer that's looking to hire for one of these in-person roles, yes, your labor market is tighter than ever. You're looking at a 150,000 decrease approximately there, a 28% decrease in the availability of workforce for workers that are looking and working locally, whereas we know remote workers are able to look nationally, or even in some cases internationally. And so another thing that I wanted to show here is, even when we look at the MSA, so when we look at the Charlotte region, we see, again, an increase in the labor force. Between pre-pandemic and today, we've seen an increase of over 70,000 individuals in the MSA labor force. Yet we see this same trend still hold for the MSA, where when you look at 2019 numbers for the MSA, you see a labor force working locally of about 1.2 million. And when we look at today with that huge increase of over 200,000 new remote workers, we've only got a labor force of about 1 million here today, again, representing about a 19% decrease in these workers that are just working locally. And one other important bit of context that I wanted to share with the MSA specifically is the difference in the number of workers that could simply be moving in. So this is not to suggest that these workers are necessarily, people from New York or California that have just moved to Charlotte for the weather, but we did see an increase of over 50,000 individuals that are working in this labor force in the Charlotte MSA, yet are not employed in the Charlotte MSA. So again, could be individuals that were here that have obtained employment elsewhere outside of the Charlotte market due to their ability to work remotely, or again, it could be individuals that we saw during the pandemic flee higher cost of living or colder cities to come to the Sun Belt communities like Charlotte. And so one of the things that we've seen individuals and companies doing today to really combat this talent shortage is Boomerang Employees. So we talked about this in a previous video where companies will see an employee leave and then they'll find that need and they won't be able to fill it. And then ultimately those employees maybe go to a new job and it's not all it was cracked up to be. It just wasn't a fit culturally. So we're seeing a lot of employees that leave a company then return to that company. And we're seeing, again, a 15% increase in those Boomerang employees recently and a 28% increase in wages. So that's another key thing for employers struggling with this talent shortage to keep in mind is employers are really having to pay to close these talent shortages today or be more creative in terms of flexibility. And so again, just to reiterate, this is one of the points we had from our talent retention study last year, our survey of job seekers. And again, the top factors they listed in 2021 were flexibility, company culture, workload balance, and physical safety. And we're continuing to hear about that importance of flexibility, the strong culture, that workload balance, making sure that companies are really supporting their employees, are being as flexible as possible, and are really coming together to make sure that they're not feeling overworked and burnt out today. And so again, that's all that I have for you today, but I hope you enjoyed this quick labor market update.